Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of What's on My Desk. You know, I never told you guys the story of how the name Luxury Bazaar came about. 17 years ago when I started doing this stuff part-time and sort of just putting stuff up on eBay, I needed to come up with a name for a company. Originally I had a bunch of thoughts in regards to something with watches, something with time, something with horology, right? And I don't exactly remember what concepts I came up with, but then I thought about the future, and I said to myself, what if this thing takes off? What is the potential scalability of a business such as this? Because if I name my watches Roman's watches, or or luxury watches or something of that nature, I would certainly limit myself to just selling watches. So then I thought about, what does the watches fit in? I figured luxury, right? So I said to my luxury, where am I going with this? And then I said to myself, well, imagine a portal that sells everything luxury: watches, accessories, jewelry, antiques, art, whatever it might be, right? And that's how I kind of came up with the name of Luxury Bazaar. At the time, there were only a handful of people getting into this business. So, for example, Ben, who owns Prestige Watches, named his company Prestige Watches. Seth named his company Essential Watches. OJ in Florida named his company Watch You Want, which was actually pretty cool, which is now actually Watchbox, because Scott Jules bought him over and it's now Watchbox. And all these names had the word watch or time or something in there. AuthenticWatches.com, right? The only one at the time was Joma Shop, which just meant nothing, but it's a catchy name. Plus there was the issue of the .com boom, where everybody was buying up domain names, and it wasn't really easy to find a cool domain name, right? So I came up with Luxury Bazaar, which to me was just, a luxury market basically is all it means, right? But then I sort of had to come up with that slogan, what is Luxury Bazaar? And I came up with the concept, Luxury Bazaar, a place where nothing is ordinary, sort of looking into the future. And lo and behold, fast forward, we do sell watches, jewelry, luxury accessories, books. I did try art for a little bit. That didn't really work out too well because the art industry is a little weird, if you ask me. Maybe I'll get back into that sometimes, in antiques and so on. But nevertheless, why am I telling you the story? It's because we are a place where nothing is ordinary. I decided to bring over some extraordinary pieces from AP, surprise, Cartier, and Greubel Forsey. And I'm going to start with the Cartier Rotonde Astrotourbillon. Humongous watch. This is a 44mm Cartier, which is a bit of a surprise if you think in terms of Cartier pieces. They're really not known for their large timepieces. They're mostly known for jewelry. It's a powerhouse of a jewelry house. Everybody knows the Cartier love bracelets and the slave bracelets and the nail bracelets. That's the first thing you probably think of when you think Cartier. And of course, the first thing you'll think of is the Panther collection and the multitude of Panther things that Cartier has done over the years, 100 plus years. So this is the Astrotourbillon in the Rotonde collection. It was 2010, SIHH. Cartier was really trying to make a bid for becoming a high-end or a complicated horology house. And rightfully so. Company has money, company has a name, a humongous name for that matter. And there should be no reason why they can also not be known to collectors as a high horology company as well. So they introduced this Rotonde Astrotourbillon. I remember reading an article, I think it was from a blog to watch, and they picked this as the watch of the year or the watch of the shows. I guess that was their opinion. They've been following watches for years and years, and for them to pick this as the watch of the year from a slew of many other innovative pieces that were out there in 2010, and I don't remember what they were. I'm not going to get into that. I think to me that was pretty impressive. And this is an impressive timepiece indeed. What makes this so different from any other Astrotourbillon that's out there? Technically, this is not a classic tourbillon. But they named it Astrotourbillon because I guess that was the best name. I don't know the best way to explain that. Because the tourbillon has a balance wheel spinning on its own axis, while the Astrotourbillon has the balance wheel moving around the entire dial. And it does it over a minute's worth of time. So this is a 1 minute tourbillon, right? The concept is kind of simple, but that's a little bit deceptive if you ask me. Because inside, the mechanics are a real pain in the butt. This is not an easy thing to make. But the watch pulls it off, and it pulls it off pretty fluidly if you ask me. And I'll be honest with you, it's a lot more satisfying to look at than a traditional tourbillon. Have this thing spinning around the axis. I mean, it's bottom line satisfying. I mean, to me anyway. This is a manual wind. Again, a huge case. Traditional deploying buckle from Cartier. I'm not a big fan of this style deploying buckle. A lot of their watches have this deploying buckle, and what you end up having to do is literally bend the strap completely in half in order to size this particular watch. And the reason I'm not a fan of that is when you go to resize it, you sort of have to squeeze this strap to get it out, and then pulling it out is a bit of a pain in the neck. And what you end up with is that. Aww. So now oftentimes you size it to your own wrist and don't really have to worry about this kink in the strap. But for a reseller like me, when I get these watches pre-owned, and I think this piece is pre-owned, you end up really having to order a new strap because this kink is next to impossible to get out over time. Moving on. What else is extraordinary that's on my desk today? The Greubel Forsey 24-second tourbillon that sits on a 25-degree incline. Look at that. You can see the tourbillon through here. I'm just going to try to get you a close-up of that. At a glance, seemingly nothing special about the watch with the exception of these two bump outs that makes it somewhat asymmetric, but it's kind of like a perfect asymmetry if you ask me. It's like asymmetric but symmetric at the same time. Manual wind, deploy and buckle, a white gold case, 360 or 355,000 Swiss francs retail. So what makes this piece extraordinary? It's really not this particular piece. It's every single piece from Greubel Forsey that is out of the ordinary. When Robert and Stephen Forsey got together in 2004, they had a vision, and the vision was to get away from manufacturing watches rather than going back and creating extremely well-made timepieces as it was done by hand hundreds of years ago. A couple of pretty extraordinary guys. I'm not going to get into the history of those two. It'll take up the entire episode. You can read about them online. Robert Greubel is more tasked with the design and overall aesthetics and the looks of the watches, where Stephen Forsey is more concerned with the technicalities, what's inside the watch, although they're both great watchmakers. Where Stephen Forsey is all about the guts and the nuts and bolts, right? And together they kind of make the perfect combination. The place that they work out of is out of the ordinary. It's a 17th century farmhouse, which they kept the original building, and then they build another structure it looks like it's literally growing out of the side of the hill. It's a huge glass building with double pane glasses that never needs heating or air conditioning. It's sort of self-sufficient, keeping a consistent temperature throughout the entire year. So the building itself is sort of a feat. It's located in Les Chaux de Fonds, if I'm getting that name right, which is about 1,000 meters above sea level. 1,000 meters is what, about 4,000 feet. It's the highest city in Europe, I believe, which makes it unique. There's no other watchmaker that can claim that. So there you go. You can be in the Guinness World Book of Records for having the highest watchmaking shop in the industry. But again, that's not important. What is important is the fact that this is the fastest spinning tourbillon. It's called the 24-second tourbillon for a reason, because the tourbillon spins around its axis in 24 seconds. Which is about, I guess, 2.5 times faster than the average tourbillon out there, right? Now, what does that do? That obviously improves the accuracy of the watch. And this is what they're all about, making less than 100 pieces a year. They're about quality, not quantity. Oftentimes, they take months, sometimes even years, that goes into research before they make a single timepiece in order to ensure that it's perfect. If you are a nuts and bolt guy and you took this watch apart and you looked at every single part, including all the screws, all the bridges, all the wheels, the level of craftsmanship on every single part that goes into these watches is superb, and I personally feel they're second to none. There's nobody out there that makes a better quality movement as far as I'm concerned. Greubel Forsey is it, and hence the price. You know, some of their watches retail upwards of $800,000. You know, quadruple tourbillons and some of the other inventions that they made. They're out there. They're pretty high in terms of price. And in terms of resale value, it's hit or miss. And the reason I say it's hit or miss is because they make so little pieces. It's really situationally based. Oftentimes you can get a timepiece in hand, such as this one. If it's going to take you a while to sell it, you really want to ensure that you buy it cheap enough as a dealer in order to be able to get out of it based on price rather than demand. But if somebody's out there looking for a particular watch, you'd be hard pressed to find them for more than 25 to 30 off brand new, just because they make so little. But on the resale end, it tends to suffer. I think this particular piece we're selling around that half price mark, right? $180,000 to $180,000, which is still not bad considering the original sticker being so high. And I've said this before also, you know, when you're talking about these independents, when they make so little watches, therefore, the market is so small on them, so they're not trading on a daily basis back and forth. Therefore, there's no real market on them or set value. And a lot of secondary dealers, such as myself, tend to want to pay a little less when these pieces come through, just to ensure that the return on investment is there when we eventually sell it, because this is not a watch I'm going to sell in a day. I could, but it could also take me 6 months to sell this particular timepiece. One more quick thing before I move on to the final thing, and again, I don't get into the whole lot of nuts and bolts on this watch. I did do an episode on the Greubel Forsey way, I believe it was the GMT, right? Where I really did get into the nuts and bolts just because the watch is so impressive, and Ian, if you can link that episode up above, that'd be great. The tourbillon itself, how do they achieve a tourbillon moving so fast? Now, it's not about technically achieving it moving faster. It's about dealing with the speed of the cage and withstanding the stresses. And the way they actually achieved that is by material use. They're using a bunch of really, really low density alloys, like astronautical and aerospace industries. Again, I don't know what these alloys are, but I know it's alloys that are used in space engineering. And that's what allows this tourbillon to run 2.5 times on an average faster than any other tourbillon and withstand the stress of that movement. We're not talking about a car here, we're talking about a watch movement. And even though you may say to yourself, well, what's the big deal, 24 seconds? It puts a lot of stress onto the tourbillon cage. And believe me, a lot of R&D went into this before they actually put this watch out. And this is what I was talking about earlier. It takes a lot of research and development in order to create something like this. It's not just about, oh, we're gonna go ahead and make a tourbillon that rotates in 24 seconds and see how it goes. No. They must have, again, I don't know, but if I had to guess, they must have went through dozens of different materials before they got it right. And that's Greubel Forsey. They'll do this until they get it absolutely right. They will not put out a subpar product. I've never heard of Greubel Forsey watches breaking. I never heard of Greubel Forsey watches not working properly out of the gate. Every single watch that comes out absolutely perfect at 100%, not 99.9. At 100%. So this is definitely a company that's out of the ordinary, and this particular piece is just the same. Moving right along to my favorite brand, and surprise, surprise, I wouldn't do this without bringing on an AP, and not just any AP. I brought a Grand Complication from Audemars Piguet that retails for $1,060,000. That's right, this is $1 million watch from AP. It is an older Grand Complication. This one probably dates back at least 10 years. But what a beauty this watch still is even so many years later. So what makes this a Grand Complication? This is a full perpetual calendar. This is a chronograph. This is a split-second chronograph. And this is a minute repeater. Let's start with the decorations of the watch. I mean, this thing is amazing. It's a full skeleton. You can see the inner workings of every single thing that this watch does, both from the front and the back. And speaking of the back, the decoration on the rotor, the decoration on the movement is absolutely superb. This was AP's way of saying, hey, we're Audemars Piguet. This is what we do. We've been doing it for almost 200 years, so guess what? We're gonna show you what we can do. We're gonna show you how well we can do it, how beautiful we can do it, and we're gonna show it to you in the most complicated combination watch ever, that of a split-second chronograph perpetual minute repeater. Bottom line is, this is AP's ways of flexing. Yeah. In today's terms, that's exactly what this is, and flexing in a big way. So what makes this watch out of the ordinary, besides the $1 million sticker price? Just the complication. It's a grand comp. Off the top of my head, I can probably name you 15 different companies that do not make this watch. They do not make it in-house. They don't outsource it because it doesn't pay to outsource something like this, nor would companies that make these kind of things would probably going to want to make this type of complicated timepiece for some of these brands. And that's just it. This is what separates them from the rest of the bunch. This is big boy stuff. Everybody that does do it, they do price them high. Comparable watch from Patek Philippe is also in the realm of $1 million. And this is what really makes it out of the ordinary, is the fact that it's so complicated. To be able to put a chronograph perpetual calendar together is a feat in its own. Like the Patek Philippe, the 5270 is a perpetual calendar chrono. That's already part of the Grand Complication, but this is a split-second chronograph. And it's also a minute repeater, and it's skeletonized. To do all that, the amount of craftsmanship and time it takes to make this particular watch is insane. And this is an automatic. It also winds itself. This is just a crazy, crazy timepiece. Let's hear the minute repeater, right? It's a thing of beauty. Definitely something out of the ordinary. Resale value, not all that great. And the reason it's not all that great is, again, I talked about this before, the price tag. It's $1 million watch. So on the secondary market, this watch is not going to resell even at half price. One, because it's an older timepiece. And two, there's not a whole lot of guys out there buying these super expensive watches. Love the bracelet. Just love everything about this watch. For those that know sort of thing. Today, expect to buy this watch on the secondary market at about a third of its price. So we're looking at about that $300,000 to $350,000 price range, which is still really, really expensive if you think about it. But if you ask me, for somebody that's out there looking for a Grand Comp, this is a hell of a deal. Just because you get out there to pick up a current model of other brands that make this type of watch today, you're spending way over $500,000. Definitely not an ordinary watch if you ask me. Let me put this watch back on before I show it to you, because I figured, you know what? If I'm gonna do stuff that's out of the ordinary, I might as well wear something that's out of the ordinary. And surprisingly, I'm actually wearing a DeWitt watch, something I discussed in the last episode, watches that don't hold their value well, a relative newcomer. But when this watch came in and I saw it, I said, oh my God, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous watch. What makes it out of the ordinary? It doesn't look like any other watch, right? It's a DeWitt Tourbillon dual time regulator. You have the hours at 3 o'clock and you have the minutes at 12, as long as you dual time on the left at 9 o'clock. But overall, what makes this one out of the ordinary is the fact that it's just different than any other watch, and it's an absolute stunner. It's a gorgeous watch, blue enamel, blue strap, just a really good looking watch. When I saw it, I said, wow. And I told you guys before, I'm one of those guys that likes all watches, regardless of their price, brand, etc. And when you see a watch like this, I'm sure you can't argue with me that this is pretty out of the ordinary. Just a good looking Tourbillon from DeWitt. In either case, I think this episode already ran pretty long. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Share with your friends who you think may like the channel and the content that I put out. And I'll see you guys next week for more watch reviews and other videos.